Bigger talks, bigger talks. We back again with another episode, and I have the amazing Candace Horbacz, a wife, entrepreneur, a mother, and podcast host of Chatting with Candace. Candace, how are you? How's it going? Welcome to Bigger Talks.
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm really excited to do this.
Yeah, I think I think it's important for people to get to know who the real Candace is, opposed to what people think she is from what they see or what they think they know. So, I want to start off with your mission. And we can kind of start from that. Your mission is, you stated, to inspire people to expand their curiosity, think independently, and not be afraid of your messiness. Can you kind of like unpack that and elaborate on what that means? I love that.
Oh, thank you. It means so many things. So I think a lot of times when it comes to very, especially taboo topics, polarizing topics, we tend to want to put ourselves in a camp because we all want to belong to something. Our minds are also a little bit lazy, so we don't want to have a lot of nuanced thinking. We just kind of we have shit to do. So
Yeah.
we put everything in these buckets or these camps, and then we identify with those things. And I'm no different than everyone else. I've drifted into that way of thinking before, and then luckily try to catch myself and constantly recalibrate. When I say life is messy, it's we all have done things that are complicated. We've all done things that are shades of gray. There's so much depth to everybody, and to just kind of cast someone away as deplorable or a decision away as deplorable, it's again, it goes to lazy thinking, and it's not really understanding the complexity of us, and all these little decisions that and impacts throughout our life that kind of make us who we are and then drive us to do what we do. Now, that's not to say we need to be filled with shame or regret or anything like that, but it's just to say life is a complicated process. And I think one of my main missions, and especially launching the podcast, was just to bring humanity to a lot of topics and personas and ideas that are kind of off the table, like we're not allowed to talk about anymore, or just certain people that we write off immediately. So I've had really polarizing people on, even people I disagree with, because I want to be an example. And it's like, at the end of the day, we're all humans, and if we want to leave the world a better place than where we came into it, we have to have compassion, we have to have empathy, and we have to have conversation.
Yeah, and I think it's important to have authentic conversations, right? To be transparent, to kind of be open to understanding, not to be so consumed in our way of thinking, our way of being, or our ideologies based on our paradigm or what we believe. And
Mm-hmm.
I think for you, I think anybody in a space of that's attractive, that has influence, that has success, you're automatically put in a box based on what the masses or how people see you or view you, but they don't know the real you. I always tell people nothing is what it seems, nothing at all. From being successful to having a title to being in relationships, it's not what it seems. So take me take me to the beginning of Candace. Like when you was a young girl, what was your aspirations? What did you grow up on? Uh, who was your role models and who did you believe in the most? Like what was your upbringing like growing up? And where you from originally?
So I never know how to answer that where am I from question, which sounds really silly, but I was born in LA and I spent a good amount of time there. My parents split, so then I moved with my mom and my siblings to upstate New York, and then we did the back and forth because custody battles are great with children. And then after I graduated high school, I moved down to South Carolina for university, and now I'm in North Carolina. And North Carolina is like where I put roots down. My family, as my children were born, and I've been the longest. So I say North Carolina now because that was my conscious decision to live here and make this home.
Yeah.
So none of the other ones really resonate with that's where I'm from. So I say North Carolina, but I feel like I have to give the whole context.
Yeah.
Um, as far as my upbringing goes, this is where it's I'm an open book, and I tell my story because I think it's important to lead by example and be transparent like you just said. So to preface that, people will say, well, of course she had a rough childhood because of the career she chose, but they have done study after study after study, so this is purely coincidental. But yeah, there was a lot of abuse in the house. My parents split when I was really young, like around 5 years old. Um, Unfortunately, a lot of the men that my mom decided to date after were also very abusive, and I love my mom. I really do. But it was a very difficult childhood, and she had her own wounds that she was dealing with that didn't allow her to show up as the mom I needed her to be growing up. So I, as the oldest, was kind of taking on a lot more responsibility than I probably should have. And, kind of taking care of my siblings a lot more than I should have. Um, and I'm very blessed for that, especially with the industry that I decided to get in, because it did make me establish hard boundaries and be able to stand up for myself and be able to say no and become like very self-reliant. So all of the things that came out of that are beneficial. As far as role models go, I mean, again, it's like written in the stars. I loved Tara Patrick and Pamela Anderson and Carmen Electra. I found those women to be so powerful, just totally stepping into their feminine energy and owning their sexuality. And I know that gets used and used and used and used, but for those women, it just seemed like they were expressing themselves to be who they truly were. It wasn't, I'm doing this for fame, I'm doing this for money. It was like, no, like these were goddesses on earth and they were just owning it. And I was like, there's something so powerful about these women. And they, people can make the daddy issues jokes. I'm sure there's a little bit of that there, right? Because I wasn't modeled like what unconditional love is from a male figure. So of course I'm going to go into an industry that's seeking and trying to take that male validation. So I'm absolutely sure there's a little bit of that thrown in there. So thanks, Dad. But but yeah, so I think again, our decisions are a constellation of events that kind of create that. But those were the women I looked up to, and to me, I didn't see that as shameful or wrong. I was like, no, this is a really powerful woman that can stand in her own right. And then I think that probably brought some peace to me. Like I can take care of me. And that kind of set the trajectory for me to figure out how I can emulate those women.
Yeah, and I think it's important to, not only to give your mom the respect and honor that she deserves, no matter what the outcomes were, right? You
Mhm,
love her, you appreciate her, but she did the best she could from what she had available. Like I was
mhm,
emotionally abandoned as a child, so I had mom issues, right?
mhm,
But I don't hold my mom to that standard because she had me at 21, and she had my sister a year before. And so now, as I'm older, I can have more compassion and grace and say, "Oh, hold on, wait on, you were a kid when you had me." And I think for you, you said something about the career you chose, but do you think things choose you, you don't choose it, to get you to a space to unpack or to kind of break down where you're at to get where you're going? Because now you're a mom, and how do you see motherhood? And do you have more sympathy for your mom when she had you because of your experiences being a mom and being in that position?
So I believe in like this really delicate dance between fate and free will. So I think both exist. And I think when you're in kind of an imperfect alignment, that's when everything's happening for you. And life is just amazing and you're almost manifesting things into your life. So I do think no matter what, I was going to end up somehow doing like nude modeling or something in the adult industry that was
Yeah,
written in the stars for me, and then my free will is kind of what took me into that industry. So a total accountability,
yeah,
but also there was some kind of underlying driving force that was kind of pushing and leading me there. I truly believe that. um so I do think that was my path. As far as becoming a mom now and understanding my mom more, I don't know if I don't know if that's true for me, because there are times where I almost don't understand her more now that I'm a mom, because
yeah,
we're just in such different places and I had a lot more tools at my disposal to kind of get me to where I am, and like the woman that I am, the wife that I am, the mom that I am, that she just didn't have. Um so I want to lay that out. but with all of those tools, we are very different women and we're very different mothers. We're very different wives. So when I look at my boys, I'm like, I can't imagine letting someone put hands on them. I can't imagine leaving them for a week with, no food in the house. Like all of these things. And again, I'm not blaming her. I love my mom to death and I'm very grateful for the life that I have. But it's not a childhood that I would want to give to my kids. So when I think back, sometimes I'm like, man, I'm left a little bit more confused than before.
Yeah, I mean that's a great response because you know how sometimes the listener or the viewer they can probably anticipate what the answer is going to be. Like, oh yeah, like yeah, I get it now. I understand. She's like, no, I don't get it. I don't understand. It doesn't make sense. And I
Hmm.
think that's fine because I think that's being transparent about where you are. And I think it's important for people to know, first of all, like going into the adult industry, like you said, was your free will. But I also think, maybe parts of you own that sexuality, right? Because I do know that there are women who want to embrace that side of themselves, but they just
Hmm.
don't know how to. Now, I don't have to go into an industry or do it, but it's a part of life, right?
Absolutely.
There's a friend who was talking bad about a former client they had, and I was like, but you took their money. You still took their money. So whether you had this negative, perception of them, you took their money. Everybody goes to the bathroom and does a number two. Like, so I'm more about like, let's be real, people. Like, no one's perfect. Everyone is hiding behind their profession or their job. I think for you, I think is powerful that you can own that side of you to talk about it to help people understand what it was for you to now be on the other side of it to say, look, this is my life. This is what I've been through. This is how I overcame it. And this is who I am.
Hmm.
Unapologetic. Take it or
Hmm.
leave it. It's okay.
Hmm.
Because I know, right? Because of the world you lived in or you're aware of, you know who's clicking on the link or watching the video that's appearing to be this perfect person or this. It's like, come on, man. Cut it. But I think, like I said before, I'm just thankful for people like you because you can share your story, not only to help people heal, but understand what it is that got you to where you're at today. My next question is when when you got into the adult industry, was it like a traumatic moment that got you into it, or is it something that just led you into that space and you just was like, I'm in it? Was it a survival thing? Like, what was the turning point to move you into that?
So I think that it was a few things. I was in a pretty bad relationship. It wasn't abusive or anything. It was just not nurturing and just not a healthy one. It was one that was kind of on power dynamics and a lot of fear and, just open-ended threats, that kind of a thing. And that was the most stability I'd ever had in my whole life. So it was really hard to walk away from that. Like I had never had just had someone there for me all of the time. So as bad as it was, like that security is what kept me there for a long time, for better or for worse. And I had some health issues that came up. So I was diagnosed with endometriosis. And it was really bad. Like I had to actually have surgery because the pain was debilitating. And they put me on this medication called Lupron, which, if you know anything about it, is a horrible drug. They use it as like chemotherapy for men, and actually for castration, for chemical castration for men. It's like no joke. So that actually made my symptoms worse. And he just didn't show up for me and made it about him. And well, I wanted kids, and the doctors are saying you can't have kids, and just all of this stuff. So it
Wow.
really forced me to be like, this person's not for me, and how can I leave? I didn't have any money. Um, had always wanted to kind of get into that industry. He was very conservative, so that wasn't going to happen while I was with him. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to make a decision for me, the one that's best for me and true to who I am. And I really want to explore this side of me because I hadn't in any healthy way whatsoever. At that time, I had only been with two men ever. Um, and I just like again like felt a pull, and the timing was just right. So I started with webcamming because that just was something I could do on my laptop right away, no experience needed, and just kind of get my feet wet and see if it was something I wanted to do. And then through that process, I ended up finding a all girl site that I really liked. It was really high production. I thought the women were beautiful in it, and it was always in these tropical houses, and I was like, this just seems I want to be a part of this. This looks so fun and exciting to me. So I reached out to them, and they sent me just like an email saying, we just need your ID and your photos and we'll let you know. And they were like, yeah, we'll fly you out to Miami. I ended up shooting for like 3 days in a row. My scenes went to #1 on the site, immediately did very well. Again, not experienced, it just happened. So luck
Yeah.
and timing, I'm sure. And probably because I looked scared shitless, and that was probably really authentic. So people liked that. And I don't know, when I was on that set and in makeup and in wardrobe and acting and performing, I was like, this is where I'm supposed to be. So it just
Right.
felt like it was the right decision for me, and then the rest is history.
And that's the thing. And I think, like, I was go back to the, when I said earlier, I was like, some things choose you, right? For whatever
Mhm.
reason. And we might not understand, or we might do. Like you said, you embraced it, you loved it, you felt aligned at the time, and there was something you fell into that you embraced and you were successful in it.
Mhm.
So I just think that's a win for you in your life and your story, because it worked for you. It might not work for everybody. So,
Mhm.
more power to you and all the women who might be in that space. It's okay. Like, I don't want people to have this negative connotation, because the world makes it so negative, right? And it's like, it don't have to be that way, because when the person is married or in a relationship, what are they doing? They're
Mhm.
intimate, they're having sex, they're fornicating. So it's part of life. So now that we got that out the way, what was the pivot from the adult industry to doing what you're doing now? Like, you have the podcast, chatting with Candace, you're an entrepreneur, you're a wife, you're a mom. Like, what was that pivot like? I mean, we know the beginning, like, what was that like? I mean, you're just doing so many amazing things now.
So I met my now husband at the very beginning of my career. So he was there before my first official shoot. So every decision was a conversation with him. The I guess the depth of it depended on how deep we were in the relationship. So in the very beginning, it was like, "Hey, I'm gonna go do this thing," and he was like, "Oh, cool, that sounds hot. Like, go have fun." But when I started making the decision to do more hardcore scenes, that was literally a conversation for 2 years between him and I, just back and forth, always reinvestigating. There was a time where he was not on board whatsoever. And then towards the end where I made that decision to do it, he was like, I don't want there to be any resentment down the road. And I don't want to tell you what to do if this is where you feel like you belong. So I'm going to try to be here for you on the other side. I can't promise, because I've never done this before. I have no idea how I'm going to react, but I love you, and no matter what, like, I hope like the best for you. So just
Yeah.
an incredible man, and very
Supportive.
supportive,
Love
just
you for
like
you.
unconditional love, right?
Agape. Yeah.
Unconditional love. And it wasn't easy. I mean, that was super hard. We had a ton of fights, lots of tears, really navigating jealousy. What does that mean? Where does that come from? What do I want in a relationship? What is unconditional love? Is it as soon as you sleep with someone else that that love goes away? We're like really getting down to first principles and like unpacking a lot of what other people just kind of shove onto us as just a universal truth. And
Yeah.
I think the most empowering part of that was like realizing you get to design your life, and you get to design your relationship however you want. And it doesn't mean you have to be open or polyamorous. Like, you can be monogamous and do all of this, but it's to choose that consciously, to really unpack that and have it be like your decision fully. And that's a really great gift that the industry gave me. So throughout that shooting, towards the end, I would kind of bounced from contract to contract to contract, which was really rare when I was shooting. Like, most people didn't have contracts.
Yeah.
It was just freelance work, but that made me feel comfortable. I knew exactly who I was working with, how many scenes I was doing. It just provided that security that I,
Yeah. Structure. Yeah.
never had,
Yeah.
growing up. So I ended up, unfortunately, having a lot of bad, I just guess, just bad actors, bad directors, bad people that were like, quote, managing me and pushing my boundaries, not respecting what my autonomy or what I was okay with, just constantly really pushing that envelope. And finally, I was like, if they're doing this to me, they're definitely doing it to a small name girl that has no outlet, and this is fucked up. So I
Yeah.
went to Twitter and was totally transparent. This is what the company is doing. I showed up to a set and they tried to get me to do XYZ that's not on my yes list, haven't even discussed within my boundaries or price or anything like that. And I ended up getting fired 48 hours after. So I was fired and blacklisted.
Mhm.
And the industry is basically one big monopoly. There's a couple small, successful production studios, but it's pretty much one company. And I couldn't work. So I was on everyone's untouchable list because no one wanted to be on bad terms with this company. So I was like, well, I don't know. Like I had my panic. I was the main breadwinner. How am I going to support, the house, all of our bills, all of these things. And my husband's like, why don't you just do it yourself? Like start your own
Mm.
production company. And I was terrified. So
Oh,
he's like a natural entrepreneur, loves
wow.
risk, loves a challenge, loves to build. I surprisingly am very risk averse. So which sounds
Yeah.
counterintuitive given the my career choice, but I just like a certain thing and predictability. And I took his lead and I started a production company. It was really successful. I ended up making way more than while I was in the industry, and it just showed me I had no idea what my value was.
And your production company was within the space of the adult entertainment?
Adult,
Oh,
yep.
okay. Got it.
hmm Yeah, and it was crushing it. Like I
Yeah.
was so happy with the scenes. I liked the control. I was like, why haven't I not been doing this whole time? And even with that success, I still feel like I didn't have that sense of fulfillment, like something was missing. And I felt the longer I was in that industry, the more I was fighting that narrative that I was there by default, that I was there because I was broke or because I had been on drugs or because my dad left or all of these stereotypes. And it was constant, and I still am constantly fighting stereotypes. And I was like, I don't know how I can really combat this. COVID happened, so no one was working. And my husband, again, I mean, he's my biggest supporter. He's like, you need to do a podcast. I'm like, I'm not ready. I'm not ready. I'm terrified. Everyone
That's
is
up to
going to
the
think I'm
husband.
stupid. What value do I have that someone else isn't bringing to the table? So for the first few episodes, he actually sat next to me and would talk to me, and I'd have a guest on. He would help me gain my confidence. And
Yeah.
then by the end of it, he's like, spread your wings, little bird. I'm out of here.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think it started as a pet project just to showcase that I'm a real person, to introduce Candace and not Eva, and to
Yeah.
say this is a character, right? She only exists in one very specific space. And then Candace is the one that, you know, she works out. She has a husband, she has a family, she has thoughts and dreams and aspirations, and she contributes back to her community. All of these things just to showcase the humanity and hopefully having a trickle down effect of that.
Hey, shouts out to your husband, like big ups. No, seriously, I think,
Yeah,
the relationships, there's a cliche, relationships run the world, but the relationship you have within your world determines your world, right?
I
Good,
love
bad,
that.
or indifferent, he supported you unconditionally. He was willing to stand the test of time to be with the person he loves and care about, and you guys have been successful.
hmm
Congratulations. Doesn't matter what the connotation of the space you guys were in. You guys were in a committed, relationship that you guys had agreements and you helped each other. That's what it's about.
hmm
I was telling a friend, not too long ago. I said, listen, in the world, everybody has opinions. Everybody has something to say. People are gonna always think and feel, but no one's in the situation you're in. You get to decide what that relationship is. You get to decide what the perspective is and the boundaries are. So don't allow the outside forces to determine what's going on inside of your world. You know, I can be in adult entertainment. I can have my own production company, and I can do chat with Candice, and I can be into spirituality and be a mom and be a wife. I can do it all. The thing that's coming up for me right now for you is, how when you see those videos when people get older, I woulda, coulda, shoulda. I feel like you're gonna be the person this says like, man, I'm really happy that I did everything that I wanted to do or I felt compelled to do. And I have no regrets because I've learned, I've grown, and I discovered a different person every time. And you can teach your
Absolutely.
kids, you can have those conversations with them and people that's coming up behind you. And I think that's what life is about. Life is not about doing what the crowd wants you to do or what your family wants to do. It's really about living out your passion that's in your heart, that's in your core. Doesn't matter what the circumstances. You did everything you were supposed to do to get where you're at, and I think that's a success. That's amazing. That's phenomenal. And I think people in your shoes need to be celebrated and need to be acknowledged for who you are, not for what you do. Because what you
Mhm.
do is not who you are. And I think,
Absolutely.
and that's what it's about here at Bigger Talks. It's like we want to have a bigger conversation around not what we see, but what's the truth, right?
Mhm,
The truth
mhm.
was you had your upbringing, you had some adversity, you had some challenges. Those challenges change you to be better and to be in a space that you are today. And you have the podcast chatting with Candace, and you're a free thinker. I love that. Free thinking. Let's really think. What does that really mean from your perspective? I know what it means from my paradigm, but what is a free thinker and how does that person think?
So for me, the way that I interpret free thinking is that you've really sat down with a lot of the cornerstone ideas that you were raised with, ones that you just think are inherently true, and really peel it back and peel it back and peel it back and understand where that first got placed in your mind. Do you align with it? Because you might. A lot of it, you might, once you get down there, you're like, yeah, that makes sense for me. That makes sense for me. But the beautiful thing is you can be like, well, actually, that one doesn't, and remove it and replace it with something that's more authentic to you. So it's not just a mass adoption of ideas, I guess, to
Yeah,
simplify it. And it's not to do things that are easy. It's to do things that are right and to stand up, to use your voice, to think of things with nuance, not to accept narratives from one side or the other, but to see that there's probably a lot to unpack in the middle, and to I guess not let your emotions get the better of you, to be able to separate the emotions from the logical thinking. What's your interpretation?
yeah. So I mean, I was just on I did an interview yesterday here in LA, and I'm at a point in my life where I'm evolved, and I had an ego death like last weekend, right? I was crying, I was just shedding, and I was just letting go of a lot of old stuff. I'm in this whole new space, and I said, everybody picks a side, right? Growing up in inner city of Baltimore, that's a side. Living in LA for 12 years, that's a side. Training and coaching wealthy people, that's a side. Being on TV, that's a side. So in all these worlds that I'm in, I'm playing all sides, but I try to protect everybody, right? So I have perception, perspectives, ideology from all these sides, and I realized, like, hold on, what does Eric want? What matters to me? And as a kid, a lot of people are like, oh, you're just too positive. How are you so positive? You're just not real. I say, listen, that's your perspective. I don't live in that paradigm. I don't have to believe that.
Mhm.
And free thinking is being your most authentic self, no matter what side it is. This could be the classiest, high profile person, and the person that's from, I'm going to be me through in and throughout. Take it or leave it. And for people to stand on what they believe. I
Mhm.
believe in doing what you feel in your soul and your gut. Doesn't matter what people think, because at the end of the day, when we go home and we go to sleep with thyself. We go to sleep with ourselves and whoever is in our space. But I can't be you, you can't be me, and no one can be you more than you. So I tell people, try your best to be your best, to know who you are so you can live your best life. Not that it's going to be easy, not that you're not going to have challenges, but we got to live from a loving space, from the heart chakra, right? From what's
Mhm.
deep in your heart, and I have three sisters, and I'm always about understanding, like, women deserve to be empowered. Women deserve to have a voice. They deserve to be heard and they deserve to be seen and felt. But because of history, a lot of that has been suppressed. As I've gotten older and got more information, I'm like, oh no, we're not doing that. You're not going to talk to her like that. No, she can
Mhm.
do that. Who are you to say that? And I think a free thinking is being free of what anyone thinks about what you believe, and coming from that perspective.
Mhm.
Because win, lose, or draw, you gotta love you and you gotta
Mhm.
be on your team. And my picking sides and is because I'm the only one in this space, right? There's no blueprint. I'm creating the first blueprint for myself and the people behind me. So I tell people, there's a book, Think and Grow Rich, and it says, a chapter says, follow your own counsel. Follow that and see where it gets you. Listen to your intuition. And I just really appreciate people who think outside the box, because I like to think about the thinking.
Mhm. Yeah,
you know? So
100%. That book's Napoleon Hill, right?
yes, Napoleon Hill,
Yeah.
one of my
Have you
favorite books.
read or listened to Outwitting the Devil?
I haven't, but I hear great story. I need
Oh
to get the
my,
audiobook.
get the audiobook. It's one of the ones that you have to do the audiobook because they narrate the devil's voice, and it is incredibly convincing. I think it's the number one book everyone should read. It
By
will
the way,
change your life.
what sign are you? Whose birth-
Gemini.
Oh wow, yeah, thinkers, witty, curious. Are you into like numerology, human design,
Oh my
enneagram?
gosh. Love numerology. I don't know
Yeah,
if you know who Andrew Gablick is, but he owns Teledipity. This is not a sponsor or anything. I just truly believe in this man,
yeah.
and I think he's the best in the game. So if you or your listeners are into it, it's
Oh yeah,
teledipity.com. You will
teledipity.
never get a more accurate reading. You just won't. It's
Listen,
insane.
I've been studying it for years. I know my soul desire number. I know my life path number. I know my expression number, my maturity number, my pinnacle number.
Love
I
that.
know my moon, my rising, my Mars, my Venus. Like literally, I'm probably the most curious person there is because I want to get to the root of the tree. I don't want to look at the tree like, oh, that's a nice tree. Like, no, who are you? Let's take the
Mhm.
fame away. Let's take the money. Let's take all these things off. Who are you? Because
Mhm.
I think that's what a real power is. That's what a real love. That's what a real person is. And numerology has really, in astrology, has really changed my outlook, not only on life, but like who I'm in this world and why I'm have a podcast and why I'm able to talk to people like you and this happening. Because like I said, I feel like my life has been a movie. I feel like my life chose me. I never
Yeah.
came to LA like, I want to be on TV. I want to do these. It's like, I just want to be great. I thought I was going to be a basketball player, like that didn't work. So I had to go pro in life. And, I've read so many books. And I think information, people listen, changes situations. And I think it's important for people to get knowledge and educate themselves. But that's how I got far. I mean, I went to college, of course, and graduated, but it didn't mean anything. It didn't prepare me for the real world. I had to
Mhm.
tap into like Think and Grow Rich, As a Man Think of, and Seed of the Soul, all these books. Are you currently reading anything right now? Do you do any like do you meditate? You do like cold showers, cold plunges? Like what is Candace outside of the businesswoman, the wife, the entrepreneur? Like what is some life hacks or some things you do to kind of like stimulate your mind or heal or enhance your vibration?
I think you always need to be learning. So, however, that whatever that modality is for you, some people reading's very difficult, so they do audiobooks or they do podcasts or educational YouTube videos. There is no
Yeah,
judgment. Just find something that's feeding your mind. I love books. So right now I'm reading The Myth of Normal by Gabor Mate and his son Daniel Mate, and I'm finishing Becoming Superhuman by Joe Dispenza. So I'm
I like
kind of
Joe.
toggling. I love
Yeah,
Joe
yeah, yeah,
Dispenza. So
yeah.
I'm toggling between those two. And then so I can't do cold therapy right now because I'm breastfeeding, and then that can
Okay.
kind of ruin your milk supply. But I do have an infrared sauna, so I try to do that a couple times a week. I huge fan of infrared. I think there's
Yeah, I
something
love
so
infrared.
healing. It's
I love it.
amazing.
Yes.
Um, Obviously making sure that you're trying to eat as clean as you can. So I have like my athletic greens that I take, and then my multivitamins. I like Thorn is a really good brand. There was something I was gonna add. You asked about meditation. I'm actually horrible at it, but I've been doing Tai Chi in the morning, which
Okay.
I love. And then
Energy.
there's this app called Othership, and it's all breathing exercises, and they're amazing. So for people like me who want to move and they're like, I can't sit still, they have walking meditations. They have ones that help you stretch. They've got stuff for couples, stuff for manifestation. It gets really, really cool and kind of esoteric in there. So I really appreciate that. Um, oh, there was something I wanted to add to that. Maybe it'll come to me later.
Yeah, we said meditation, cold showers, cold plunges. We talked about human design. What's your life path number, by the way?
Oh my gosh, I should know this. So I actually just have it all integrated into my
Yeah, it's your month, your
phone. Like,
day,
so
and
he
your
makes
year.
custom calendars for you,
Yeah.
and it's just in my calendar. I think I'm a 5.
Okay.
Or I'm on my year 5 right now. What is my
Personal year
life?
5. When's your birthday?
May 29th, 89.
So 5 is 5, 2, 9. So 2 and 9 is 11. 1 and 2. 2 and 5 is 7. And 7. So 1 and 9 is 10. 10 and 8 is 18. 18 and 10 is 28. Take away 1 is 27. So 2 and 7 is 9. So 9 and 7, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. You might be a life path 7, if I'm not
Maybe.
mistaken. And
I can pull it up really quick, actually.
because life path 7s, as I've studied this, they're very deep. They seek the truth. They're all about truth seekers. And actually, 2023 is a 7 year. So if you notice, you watch social media, you watch
I'm
the
a
news,
7.
Right, you're seven. So you're all about knowledge, you're all about information. And sevens, their life can be challenging internally. They go through a lot of different things. But like this year, 2023 equals seven, anything that's been hidden in the dark comes to the light. If you see with a lot of celebrities, a lot of things are coming up, people being exposed. And so everybody's going through some type of like internal battle. And I'm big on like spiritual currency because I've been realizing living in LA with all types of people and just people in general. I've been spiritual my entire life. That people have money, people have fame, they have success, but they're lacking the depth of their spiritual bank account. And it's
Yeah.
not like, oh, religious, godly. It's just about understanding thyself, higher self, being attuned to their spirit, their emotions, their gut instinct, having information like numerology, astrology, because you need information to kind of understand what you're feeling. And I think you said something earlier about I'm big on EQ, emotional intelligence,
Hmm.
because that's a strong suit to have as a trait and awareness to kind of scale or get through some of your toughest moments. But sevens are they're truth seekers. So
I remembered my last thing that I thought was really crucial. So, and it goes into spirituality. I think everyone needs some kind of mentor. So, whether it's a business coach, right now I'm working with, he's kind of my spiritual teacher.
yeah,
So, his name is Carlos Waters, and I mean, he's amazing. He's just this incredible mystic, and I've only just begun and I'm already blown away. So, I think it's really important to have somebody not
mentor.
necessarily that becomes your guru, like your guru or your god, right? Everyone's human, so to make sure that you always keep that in mind, but just someone to kind of challenge you and bring that nuance and kind of shepherd you into certain paths.
Yeah, and I think life is perspective. You know, being in so many different rooms and so many different entities and energies, being in all types of worlds myself, I realize it's all perspective. Because Dr. Wayne Dyer says, if we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change. But that's a matter of perspective. If I only grow up in South Carolina, North Carolina, and I stay there my entire life, there's only so much I know about myself and the world at large. So I always tell people be curious, um, and to tap into their inner being. Let's talk about psychedelics. What is
Let's
that all
do.
about? Like, what is that like? Because people have asked me over time, like, are you on mushrooms? And I didn't know what they were asking. I'm like, huh? And it was like, I was like, no, that's like, oh, never mind. What are they talking about? So I know a little bit, but I don't know enough to share with the audience. So can you kind of like elaborate on psychedelics and what it means to you and how did you get into it?
Sure. So I think right now a lot of people are focused on healing, like healing trauma, healing old wounds, trying to kind of crack that outer shell that's hiding who we truly are. And I think a lot of that is a defense mechanism, just the way we were parented in general. Our parents did not have nearly as much empathy and compassion as the generation following. And I'm sure that's going to kind of always kind of cascade down, right? Hopefully, our kids are always doing better than we are. But we do have a lot of healing to do. I mean, especially millennials, we've been through a ton in our life.
Yeah.
9/11, a pandemic, parents that kind of had us be feral children and raise ourselves. There's just been a lot. We've had to deal with social media when we didn't have it before, and kind of that challenges a lot of our identity and how our self-worth is portrayed. So I think psychedelics, we're understanding the healing modality of it, and it's not like a drug that we've been told our whole life. We had these campaigns that were paid for by big alcohol, ironically, that were like, this is your brain on drugs. And it would be a frying egg or a girl melting into a recliner. And you're like, I'm never doing that. That's horrible. Or
Yeah.
this idea that only people that are, homeless are doing drugs. You're right. It's always the failures. And you're like, no, we're now learning that this was paid for by Harvard and they were researching it there. That MAPS now at Johns Hopkins is showing insanely promising work when it comes to depression, PTSD, addiction, all sorts of ailments. And they're doing it obviously in a very tight container. But these modalities have been used by ancient tribes forever. And now we're just kind of commercializing and modernizing them. So I think we're rediscovering ancient knowledge. I think it's very careful. You have to be very careful as to who is facilitating, who's leading and holding the space, who's with you while you do it. Why are you doing it? What's your intention behind it? I'm not a fan of just doing it recreationally and going to a party. I think that that's not really exactly how it's meant to be used. I think that these are very powerful tools, and you don't want to misuse them. Just like anything else, right? It's a technology. So depending on how you use it, it could be healing or it could be hurtful. So for me, again, this is like husband led because I am super risk averse and he loves anything that's new and challenges him. I have
What
never
sign is
done
he?
he's an Aries.
Oh yeah, y'all get along. Fire in the
Yeah,
air.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
like soulmates on
Right.
pretty
That's
much
amazing.
every, yeah. He's and then if you go into Easter and I'm a snake and he's a rat, and it's just like we just
Oh
match.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You know about
Yeah.
the Chinese. I'm a dragon. That makes sense.
Okay,
Okay.
my
Yeah,
mom's actually a dragon.
yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah. But yeah, so he started down that path a little bit before me, and I was super nervous. I had never done drugs, quote drugs or plant medicine. My dad was a cop, so the little that he was in my life, it was very much instilled that drugs are terrible and only criminals do them and you can die. That's pretty much that was my truth. So I saw what it did for my husband, and he had done a couple psilocybin journeys and how profound they were for him, and I just trust him more thoroughly than anything else in this world.
Wow.
So I was having trouble getting pregnant, and as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, I'd been told I was infertile. Being a mom just felt like that was the thing I was supposed to do on this earth, and I was going to do everything I could to try to get pregnant. And I was kind of leaning into spirituality and reading and Joe Dispenza and understanding that certain things can store in your body, traumas can store in your body, and psilocybin is a great tool to release those traumas. So I did a mushroom journey all by myself with our shaman. So we have a shaman. It was incredible. I had a lot. So my experience wasn't really visual; it was more physical. So I had a lot of tremors, so a lot of physical release that way. And I was pregnant 2 weeks later.
Oh wow.
So,
Right.
and my
That's
doctor
amazing.
was like, I don't understand how. I don't understand. Your hormones aren't there to support a pregnancy. I don't understand how you're pregnant,
Is
but
that big research on
congratulations.
that?
On fertility? No, because I feel like that still probably falls into the mystical space. I
Because
don't.
I'm like, you that's I mean, that's even a brand that can reach out that you can support or endorse and maybe create your own, but that's a win. I mean, think if certain women are told they can't have kids and they have a great shaman lead them and they take a few mushrooms and then they have kids. So not that that's recommended, but I'm just saying that's a breakthrough. That's a story. I've never heard that.
It's anecdotal for sure. So I mean,
Yeah,
for me, I don't believe that was a coincidence. And I
yeah.
legitimately had my doctor saying, "I don't know how you're pregnant right now, but congratulations." And that was the only thing that
It's the
I had
power of
really
the
done.
spirit. That's a miracle right there.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So I mean, and then you have people that are, hosting these events in their house in San Francisco, and they're doing it every other week, and they've done 13 ayahuasca trips in 2 years, and that's not good. I think that
Yeah,
that's someone who's trying to find a way to be unique, or someone who wants to perpetually be in a state of healing and not actually heal. So again, it comes down to the user and comes down to why and intention. But I think if you do your own research, Michael Pollan's How to Change Your
the
Mind is
power is amazing. Yeah,
yeah, like get into that, watch the series, read the book, and do your own research and see if it's for you. Look at the work that MAPS is doing. You'll see that it's not this thing that we've stigmatized. And it's just crazy to me that we take something like psilocybin and say that you're a horrible person if you do it and you're a druggie, but then opioids are legal and
yeah.
totally ruin people's
Get
lives. So you
addicted.
just have
Yeah.
to like look at the facts and take your emotion and all of that propaganda that's kind of been put on us since we were little and make your decision for yourself.
Yeah, and it's powerful that you say that because I've always been curious. I'm a person like, what's the intentions behind something? What's the
Mm-hmm.
purpose? What's the outcome? What's the big picture? Like, why are we doing this, and for what reason? Would it, even times in life, it's like, I feel like life can be assimilations. It's things reoccurring, but it's like, what are we here to do? Like, I know what I want to do, but what's the big picture? And I was talking to a friend. He's in Tulum. I'm like, how's it all these people are having these ceremonies, but they're having these experiences and supposedly they're healing, but their life is not changing. Like if your
Mm-hmm.
life is not, I'm not saying maybe it's not supposed to change, but I'm into like if I'm going to do something, it's for evolution of my soul of who I am in this lifetime, I would think. But I just seen like people doing it, but I don't really see no change in their life. So I'm glad you kind of like made that, certain on like to do it for the right reason, to kind of understand it. There's a thing they say, we know things we don't understand. And all
Mm-hmm.
out getting, Proverbs 4:7 says, and all you're getting, get understanding. So I'm always trying to understand things I know or don't know. But I just think it's powerful for someone to, share that information like yourself. And moving forward for like in your life and in your career, like what's your intentions and what is the big picture for Candace and how does she see herself 3 to 5 years from now? Like, I see you on panels. I see you writing a bestseller book. I don't know if you have one, but I just see the evolution of, you like, what does that look like for you?
Oh, thank you so much. That's very kind.
Yeah.
No book as of now. I
Okay.
love writing, so maybe one day. It's funny you say panel. I'm doing my very first one the first week of March in Miami.
Okay.
So I'm
Congratulations.
thank you. I'm super nervous. It's a pretty big audience, but the whole theme of the panel is actually the evolution of a person. So you're tapped into something right now because
Yeah,
you just said all
yeah,
of that.
yeah,
So
yeah.
maybe I do have a book and I don't know it yet.
Yeah, I mean, I pick
Um,
up on people's, spirit.
yeah.
So I was like, it's some things just come through me, but that's what I see and feel.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So I'm very nervous to do live public speaking, so hopefully I do well and uh
You
I could
will.
definitely see I could see panels for sure because
Yeah,
it intrigues me and I think talking about complex topics like sexuality and spirituality really get me going. I love that because it challenges so many of our core beliefs.
yeah,
Hopefully the podcast does really well, and then that can kind of stem off into other things, like really creating a community, I think is really important to me. So
and what is the synopsis of your podcast? I know it's chatting with Candace, but is it wide
it's
open? Is it intentional? Is it a niche? Like, what is it about?
it's following my curiosity. So I'll
Okay,
find a topic or a person and dive super deep into that. So pretty much all of February is on the divine feminine, healing root chakra.
oh, I love that.
I got super mystical out of nowhere, but I'm just diving and all of these people are kind of coming onto the podcast that I didn't think I was going to get. So it's very serendipitous. So I just try to lead with that intuition. And again, it's like challenging conversations. Like I had Vilana Marcus on recently. It's not out yet, but we just recorded. So we are talking about really owning that sexual goddess energy, polyamory, how you can be married and like married but still have an atypical commitment.
Yeah,
It challenges a lot, and people are gonna probably get a little bit flustered. We talk about women and the allocation of sexuality. Like you're allowed to own your pleasure, and that's still a hot button topic. So yeah, it's just it will see where it goes. I feel like the podcast kind of has a life of its own. So
yeah,
hopefully that just continues to grow. And like I said, creates a community behind it where it can kind of constantly evolve with me.
yeah,
But yeah, that's where I'm at right now.
yeah.
Just growing and learning.
And I think it's beautiful because I feel that you're in total alignment of what you're supposed to be doing. And I just want to give you some acknowledgement for, congratulations on everything you're embracing that is uncomfortable. When it comes to speaking, the trick is because I've spoken on a few panels and in front of people, is when you're nervous, the best way to kind of like not master, kind of like conquer the fears is to tell yourself you're excited before. I got that from Mel Robbins, but what I learned myself is really saying that, like, listen, guys, this is my first panel discussion. I'm so nervous. I'm so afraid. Because when you acknowledge the emotion or the energy or the feelings, it doesn't take over you. You just kind of like release it into the ether. And then maybe you can say, I'm here, you know? And then you move from there because that's your authentic self. Look, I'm nervous. I'm very, but thank you guys for showing up. Let's talk. So I just think, you're a trendsetter for a lot of different things. And like I said, I just see you scaling and some for women more so to empower them to be their best self in whatever capacity you choose. But I just think you should be proud of yourself on the life you're living. And I think it's important for you to be celebrated and for people to know about you outside of adult entertainment because that's something you did, but that's not who you are.
Mm-hmm. No, I
So
appreciate you.
yeah,
Thank you.
I think it's important. So I always have a question, towards the end that I ask my guests sometimes if we get to it. So there's two questions. The one question is what's working for you, and number two is what's your greatest challenge right
So, what's working for me is really tapping into what's going on in my body. I feel like that's what's led me to that specific topic that I've been tackling for February, and that has aligned me with incredible guests that I don't think necessarily would have come to me because they came to me. It wasn't like I sought them out. They were like, "No, I want to be a guest on the podcast." I'm like, "Holy shit, I didn't how do you know about my podcast?"
Yeah.
Um so I just had my second baby, and there's still some residual like flight or fight that's going on, especially in my root chakra, especially in like inside of my vagina, honestly.
Yeah.
So a lot of women you'll go to like pelvic floor rehab just to make sure how everything's healing after you have a baby. And this happened the first time around too, where it's just constantly contracting. So it's not ever in a state where I'm relaxed and open. And, you know, if you believe in like the divine feminine and the divine masculine, if you're constantly contracted, like that's not the feminine. Like you're in your masculine, you're ready to go, you're ready, you know what I mean, to conquer or fight or whatever you have to do. Like you perceive a threat. So I've been really tapping into how do I learn to soften, to open, to trust, to let my husband be in the space, to really trust that he's going to protect me and I don't have to protect myself because for so long I had to protect myself. So what's working for me is just being radically honest with where I'm at, and it's not where I thought I was as far as trust and security goes.
Yeah.
Um, and then what's challenging for me is having two babies and having a husband and also having these ambitions of growing a podcast and constantly learning and bettering myself and creating a community and having really tight rules that I put on myself for work because I don't have a boss is creating that balance. So that is something I'm navigating as well, is understanding like why do I put so much pressure on myself and what am I running away from? Is there something maybe I think I'm going to not show up as a mom, and is that why I'm jumping so heavily into scheduling? Because you know avoidance is a huge pattern for a lot of people, and just you know trying to figure that out and be honest with myself so I can show up and be the best wife, mom, person to myself and still not let that individuality die, but also respect my commitments to my family.
Yeah, and I think, getting back to the soft space and, relaxing and regulating the nervous system. But I think the word that comes up for me is trust, right? To
Mhm.
trust is more the feminine side, right? The feminine energy.
Yep.
They say the masculine is the giver and the feminine is the receiver.
Yep.
So when you're trusting, you're trusting that whatever you're supposed to receive is going to come to pass. Like it's going to manifest.
Yep.
And coming from difficult upbringing or having challenging moments as a child, all you know is how to survive or how to protect yourself, which I can relate to. And then you get to a space where you're like, okay, it's great to be in my masculine. How do I allow the feminine to kind of have space in my life so I can have some balance?
Yeah.
Because as you know, you can overdo, overgive, overbe, and then you burn out, and then you don't have anything for anyone. So I just think the fact that you're honest about it and you're aware of it is that growth, right?
Mhm.
And I think everyone listening should know that. And I think for men, or especially men, because women are they're getting all the power and they're developing and they're in leadership roles as they should because they deserve it. But I think the men we got to step up and help the women in that space, right? By filling up our spiritual cup, right? The feminine side of a man, being vulnerable, being able to
Mhm.
articulate our emotions and our feelings, praying and meditating and building up our spiritual strength. So when we are with our women or our sisters or friends, family, moms, whoever, they feel that safety, right? Within our
Mhm.
spirit, within our aura layer, within our vibration. They don't need physical matter to kind of make it make sense. They just
Mhm.
it's a knowing. And so I think it's important for all people to kind of like regulate our emotions because it's easy to be triggered now because of social media
Yep.
and everybody has an opinion. And sometimes their opinion doesn't matter, and sometimes we give people more power over our lives than they deserve because they don't even know us.
Mm-mm.
So that's big to you for knowing that and understanding that. Is there anything else you want to share? Is anything? You say you had a speech coming up. Where can we find you? Can we follow you? How do we engage with Candace, and how do we get to build with you and be part of your community?
Well, thank you so much. This was incredible, and you are so kind, and I really, really enjoyed talking with you. You can find my podcast at chattingwithcandice.com, and that has all of my Candice socials. And then my Twitter account that I'm the most active on is Fall in Lovia, but you have to type it in because as of now it's shadow banned, so that one's tricky. But that's pretty much where you can find me. The panel is March 4th at the Miami Convention Center, and that's with Pomp, and he's kind of hosting it. And the panel is The Evolution of a Person.
Oh wow, well, that's
Hmm.
amazing. Congratulations. And social media, you said Twitter, Instagram, is it the same as well?
So yeah, so the Instagram there's Eva Lovian, that's my alter ego, and
Yeah,
then there's Candace Horbacz, and then that's a lot of podcast stuff, some family stuff, some cooking stuff, so more of my day-to-day activities. And then the Eva one is more just pretty pictures, and then I try to throw in something philosophical or spiritual just
yeah,
to like add to it. I'm like, I know the picture is why you're here, but maybe you can read the caption and take something away, or
yeah.
check out a book I'm reading and then inspire you to pick up a book as well.
Get some wisdom. Chatting with
Hmm.
Candace. Candace, this has been beautiful. Thank you for your time, your energy, your awareness, and the wisdom you shared today on Bigger Talks. I'm pretty sure people will appreciate this interview and follow you and get to know about you, the mom, the entrepreneur, and everything else that you have, and the wife. So thank you once again. This was beautiful.
Thank you.